Welcome to Kava and Kettlebells, where we talk about Kava, fitness, and life. Let's get Kavified.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Kava and Kettlebells. This is Charles.
Hey guys, this is Heidi. Thank you so much for tuning back in. If you haven't already, please take 5 seconds if you like what you're hearing and like and subscribe. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Kava_Kettlebells. Share with your friends and family and really help us get this message out. Remember, we do not monetize off this. We fund this completely by ourselves, so it would really help and mean all the world. If you like this podcast, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. All right, so on today's episode, we are going to be talking all about Kava. So we introduced ourselves last episode. We, talked a little bit about Kava, but what the heck is Kava? First, we are going to do our workout of the day. So for me, today I did triceps and shoulders. So I did mostly dumbbells today. Sometimes I'll mix it up. I think triceps and shoulders are easy to do on cables, but I stuck with mostly dumbbells today. I warm up with a little bit of lightweight lateral raises, front raises, standing skull crushers, and then I get into seated overhead presses with the dumbbells, and then I lay right down and do skull crushers with the dumbbells. And then I like to stand up and do alternating, like a set of lateral raises and then superset with front raises. And then I mixed it up and did the one arm. I guess you'd call it a superset, but I do a tricep extension first with one dumbbell, one arm, one set, and then both hands, one set with a heavier weight. And then third set, one arm, fourth set, double with both, and then I just ended with a barbell overhead press. That was my shoulder and triceps.
Nice. So today for me, it was back and biceps, and how I do, my splits and stuff like that. I always like to put my back work with biceps. That's just how I've done my split.
And like we talked about last episode, did you do deadlifts on your back day?
I didn't do deadlifts today.
But normally he would.
Normally I do.
On back.
No, so usually for me, for back day, I like to start with, I'm a big fan and big proponent of body weight pull-ups. If you don't have pull-ups in your routine, like you gotta work on them. Even if you're a power lifter or, a big person, whatnot, like you gotta work on that body weight strength, right? That body weight strength. So I always do pull-ups. Then what I like to do is I like to go into some type of like dumbbell or barbell row. And then I like to do, pull downs, and then usually like a low seated row with the cables. And then for bicep work, really for biceps, and you could chime in on this, there's only so many things you can do.
Yeah, you can only do so many different curls.
for me, I like to do heavy straight bar curls. And then I like to do a type of concentration curl. Usually that's like on the preacher bench. I'll do like the machine preacher. Then I usually end off with like hammer curls, hit the outside of the biceps.
Yeah, so just Charles said the hammer curl. So a hammer curl works the outside of the bicep, whereas a traditional curl will work that peak of the bicep. So people always kind of ask like, what's the difference? That's the difference. And a lot of people do hammer curls and think it's working the tricep. It's all about that mind to muscle too. Like it's on you to engage the muscle properly. So if you do a hammer curl, you could engage your triceps, but you should be engaging the outside of that bicep. Yeah,
so is that. And there's a little bit of cardio. I usually try to do 10 minutes in a stair stepper. Not excessive, but ideally I like to hit, about 60 minutes of cardio a week. And then on my off day, I'll usually do more cardio.
All right, so what the heck is Kava?
All right, so Kava is actually a root, and it comes from a tree. And the shrub, it's part of the pepper family. So the name for Kava is actually Piper methysticum, and it comes from both Latin and Greek, and it means pepper and mildly intoxicating. And if you drink Kava, you know that it can potentially... I don't like the word intoxicating. Honestly.
Yeah, I don't like that because people say that it's an alcohol alternative, but what we mean by that is we drink Kava instead of alcohol, but it does not. So people go into drinking Kava thinking it's going to make them feel like they're drunk, and it doesn't. It's a totally different effect, and that's why we like it. Like you have control of your mind. sorry, I'm losing my voice. You have control of your mind. It's not intoxicating. So I agree. I don't like the word intoxication.
No. And two, when we talk about Cava, so Cava is a psychoactive plant. And Cava is made up of things called Cava lactones. There's 18 Cava lactones, main Cava lactones in the Cava plant. And then 6 of those Cava lactones give Cava their real, like the effects that you feel the most. So I'm going to say this again. Cava is a psychoactive plant.
Not to be confused with psychedelic.
Yes, it's not a psychedelic, and it's not going to get you drunk like alcohol. But what Cava does do is it makes you feel very good. And how it does that is because it acts on the GABA receptors in the brain. So just like alcohol does, when you drink alcohol, your GABA receptors kind of works on those. And again, kind of gives you some of those feelings of like inhibition, relaxation. But we know with alcohol, right, the more you drink, it's going to take you, to a bad place. And it's going to have all the negative health, I don't want to say benefits, health detriments that drinking alcohol will do. So kind of going back to the Cava plant, right? It's a big shrub. It's from the Pacific Polynesian Islands, right? So most Cava that you buy and get and consume, it's going to be from places like Fiji, Vanuatu, Samoa, Hawaii, Tonga, all kind of in those areas, right? And what's really unique about Cava is every place that grows it, it's a little bit different. And when we talk about Cava, we say cultivars. So you're talking about the type of Cava, you're talking about the cultivar, right? So, it's not strains. When we talk about strains, that's more for things like cannabis. Cava, we talk about cultivars. Now,
going off of each cultivar in each area, it's going to have a little bit of a different taste. So you can kind of think of it like different, if you want to compare it to alcohol, it's like different kinds of alcohol. They all kind of get you drunk, but they all kind of taste a little bit different. And that's the same thing with Cava. In the beginning, you're just like, man, this all tastes like dirt. But once you use it a lot, you can taste the difference in the different strains and not strains. You can taste the difference in the different cultivars. And yeah, it's really cool, especially the more you do it, you're able to pick it out and you're able to taste them. Just like you would drink a vodka versus a rum and you would know the difference. The more you drink Cava, you can drink, a Solomon versus a Tonga and you can know, what's what.
Yeah. And when we get into cultivars, we're going to talk about a little bit more like the effects, but, when we talk about back to Cava, right? So it has to be grown in a certain kind of environment. And that's why Cava is a very special plant, because it really kind of comes from, again, like I was saying, these islands and regions out in the Pacific where the soil and the atmospheric conditions are well enough for Cava to grow. Now, with that being said, we have heard of some Cava being grown in other places, namely Florida. There might be, some people try and grow Cava down here because the the environment, right, is conducive to how it's grown.
Yeah, super humid, it's humid and warm all year round. And that's imperative, to be able to grow Cava.
Yeah. And then growing Cava. Now, this is something too that we really want to stress to our audience. A lot of work goes into growing Cava. When you plant these plants, you really can't harvest them until at least usually about 4 to 5 years, if not more. Okay. So think about that. It's not a yearly crop cycle. Think about kind of stuff that we could do in our backyards and our gardens and stuff like that. No, these have to be grown for a while. So really not, again, it's a long-term investment for a lot of these farmers, right? Who have Cava farms. By the time that they go to actually take the root out, because with Cava, it's a big shrub, right? And then it goes down to the roots. And you pull those roots out and you harvest those roots. You dry them, you grind them up, and that's what makes Cava, the powder. Okay, and we'll get some more stuff down the line about how to prep Cava But ultimately, when you buy Cava, when you buy that pouch of that brown powder, that's coming from that root in that plant. And that's had to been, growing there for years.
And that's something that, a lot of people will go to Kava bars. And it's always interesting because people will go to Kava bars and they'll complain that it's so expensive. But it's really not that expensive when you consider how much drinks cost when you go to a normal bar, or you want to get like bottle service or something like that. And it's expensive. So I think it definitely is not expensive, in my opinion, when you compare it to getting alcohol. But people don't understand what goes into getting that plant. And it takes years and years. And you talk about, earthquakes and natural disasters that are happening, and then that will just destroy who knows how many crops. And it takes a long time. It is very physical, manual labor to get that root out of the ground. It's not like you can just go in your backyard and pull some weeds. It takes, teamwork. And these farmers are working so hard, and people don't understand that. They think that it's just this quick thing that you can grow in your hydroponics in your house, and it's not. And so I think that's really important that people understand it takes a long time. It's a lot of work, and you want to pay for that. If you want a good product, you need to pay for it.
So definitely, like how you saying is, we're just trying to stress that a lot of work goes into getting Cava from overseas over here to primarily, where we're at, United States, to drink it, right? So with that, with that process too, there's a lot of, I want to say, supply chain, I guess, that goes with it. So you got to think about it, right? You got your farmers, you got everything to bring it over here. And then once you get it, especially if you're drinking at a Kava bar, right? They got to get the Kava in. So the vendor probably is going to test that Kava, test it for heavy metals, any bacteria, all that kind of stuff, make sure it's good to consume. And then to make that Cava, which we'll go into, but then you have to strain it. You have to put in water, get all the Cava lactones out to essentially get the grog here that you drink.
And so that's Cava, and we drink Cava to just relax, be present with our children, to just wind down, and it feels good. It makes you happy. It makes you talkative. But there is real cultural history to it. And that's what I think is important when you are drinking Cava, to understand the history of it. And it's not, we have very much Americanized Cava, which is great. We have Cava bars, and they're so fun, such a great community. We like to spice it up at Cava bars, and, they can make all sort of fun drinks and extracts. But I think it's really important to remember the roots, and pun intended, the roots of Cava, where it came from, and the culture behind it.
Yeah, and namely, the culture, we kind of gotta give, like in a sense, respect for the roots. Like how you mentioned, Cava here in America is quite different than how it's was consumed over in Polynesia and the Pacific, right? So here we use it as an alcohol replacement. Cava bars will make mocktails with them, all that kind of stuff to make it taste good, which,
I get it, it's a barrier.
I understand it.
Yeah.
It's definitely, Cava doesn't taste the best when you consume it in its pure form, right? It kind of tastes a little earthy. Some people call it, dirt water or mud water.
Getting muddy is, getting Cava-fied or getting muddy. Yeah.
But when we talk about the history of Cava, it goes back centuries, and culturally it was used as a big part of rituals and ceremonies, and all the way up to the fact of it being sort of a piece of negotiations amongst tribes, a way to bring people together, spiritual, kind of a tool as well. So, just keep in mind that when we consume Cava over here, just in general, a lot had to go into it, right? So even present day, the farming, the excavation of it, the processing of it, getting it over here, the preparation of it, and then all the meanwhile too, just pay homage to where it came from, right? So this was for multiple cultures. this was a huge piece of their life and, their the whole upbringing, right, for centuries. And now over here in America, it's great that we have it, and it's great that we're using it, and I'm very happy that we found it. But, it's just one of those things where we kind of like to say, just remember where it came from.
Yeah, be respectful of it, and
understand what goes into it. And, it is a powerful plant and, root. So treat it with respect too.
Yeah. So when we talk about, we kind of mentioned it makes you like talkative, and people, they're like, I don't want, like, how does that work? That's not possible, but it's true. And especially for people who are a little more introverted and maybe a little bit antisocial, it's crazy because they'll go to a Cava bar, they'll start drinking it, and they're like, I've never talked to so many random people in my life. Like, I made friends, like, that's amazing. That's never happened to me. And it really is like wonderful like that. And tribes, what they used to do is they'd get agitated with the tribe next to you. And what do you normally do? You battle, you fight. But what they would do is they would have a Cava circle. They would sit down, they would drink Cava, it would relax them, and then they would talk it out. And like, how awesome is that? Like, this drink that can bring people together and prevent, that violence and create a workable solution for people. And, I promise you, when you drink it, it'll make sense. You'll be like, I get it now. Like, how it opens up people. And that is a really cool piece of the history of Cava, and that it was used in that way.
Yeah. And I kind of started to touch on this a little bit in the beginning, but let's talk about, why Cava does what it does. So it's a plant, right? It comes from the pepper family of trees. We harvest that root. We use that root from the tree to strain it and make a drink or an extract. And there's, capsules out there too. But namely, we use that root and ingest it to, have an effect. And for some people, that effect might be different, right? Some people might use Cava for sleep because Cava is very relaxing, especially certain cultivars are very, very good for insomnia. They can, put you out on the couch. But there's also, the social aspect that Heidi was kind of touching on, that when you do drink Cava, it does open you up. It makes you feel good. It puts you, for me, I always kind of describe it as kind of like that warm, fuzzy kind of vibe.
It just makes you happy.
I don't know. It's kind of like, it just makes you happy. Puts you in a good mood. So there's uses for Cava, and some cultivars too are a little bit more, uplifting. So, they're better for the daytime versus some Cavas are better for the nighttime.
So there's two things that you'll hear. You'll hear heavy and heady. And those are the difference between more of like heavy is more, nighttime. And I always say heavy, like my eyes are getting heavy, ready for sleep. And then there's heady. And so heavy is kind of more of like a body, and like heady is more, like in your mind. And that is more euphoric, more uplifting, and just better suited for the daytime. But even though, if you smoke marijuana, you're familiar with indica and sativa, you can kind of think of it that way. They don't have the same effects, but it's very similar. Yeah.
And you also have your balanced cultivars, and namely, a lot of times your cultivars from Fiji tend to be a little bit more balanced. Versus like your cultivars from Vanuatu tend to be a little bit more heavy. Me personally, my favorite Cavas come from Vanuatu because they're heavy, and I like Cava that kind of like is more sedating, more relaxing, because I use it more for nighttime.
Yeah, we drink, like we said in our previous episode, we end our evenings with this. We're drinking Cava with the kids while we're making food, and we eat dinner, and then we go to bed. So we typically don't drink Cava. I mean, we do drink Cava during the day, but for us, our usual daily routine is drinking Cava in the evening. So we primarily do more heavy cultivars of Cava.
I like that, heavy eyelids.
Heavy. My eyelids are getting heavy, ready for bed.
But so how does Cava work in the body? And like I was kind of mentioning Cava lactones. So the Cava lactones are the active ingredients in the Cava root, and it's psychoactive. Okay, so those Cava lactones are psychoactive, and there's 6 main Cava lactones. We're going to go kind of dive into this probably more into a detailed episode. But if you go to our Instagram at Kava_kettlebells, we have post on post along with our website too that really go into the details about these Kava lactones. But for the sake of keeping it kind of top level, just know that the Kava lactones are the active ingredient in Kava that gives it its psychoactive effect. Now, those Kava lactones, when you ingest them, again, namely what it does is it hits your GABA receptors. So when your GABA receptors are interacting with those Kava lactones, you kind of think about winding down, the inhibition kind of feelings coming up, the stress relief, anxiety kind of coming off you. Kind of like I said, that warm, fuzzy feeling. It's kind of like a wave of relief coming over you.
That's a good way. It really is. It's like a wave, and it just kind of like whooshes over you. And that's why it's so great. At the end of a stressful day, it's especially because we work from home. And so it can be hard to like turn things off going from like, work to home. And a Kava is a great way to do that and just kind of like break the seal, so to say, and, and just like, go into home and just like this relaxation and warmth and nice, like it just feels good.
So, in my opinion, I think Kava is like, it's like an amazing substance because you can use it for an alcohol replacement because you can go out, you can go to a Kava bar, you can have friends over to your house, you can make Kava, and you can have a good time without having to resort to, alcohol or drugs, right? Like harder drugs. Kava, you can drink it, you'll feel good. It, like we're saying, it opens you up. If you drink a lot of Kava, it doesn't get you drunk, but you definitely you feel it.
You feel good. You feel good. Like I always say, I get kind of laughy and giggly, and I like to dance and just be happy. And so like you feel good, and it's just a great way to just kind of end the day and feel good.
Yeah. And our next episode, we're going to talk about side effects, but I do want to point this out that really with Kava, when you drink it, it kind of speaks to you in the sense that you'll know when you've had too much.
Yeah.
It's very much one of those plants when you ingest it that when you kind of know when you're getting to a point where it's like, all right, I'm done with it. And again, you got to respect the root when you drink this thing. And
I think that's a great point too, is it's really hard. I don't even want to say overdose, but you can't really have too much because your body will let you know, like you're done.
Yeah.
And there aren't a ton of, negative side effects, but again, we'll get into that in another episode. But it is, it's just great. You don't have the hangover. When you drink alcohol, you have a hangover. It doesn't affect your metabolism like alcohol does. It feels good, helps with your sleep, and very minimal, side effects, no issues the next day. You don't have to worry about waking up feeling groggy and hungover. And it's as risk-free of like a substance as possible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit more now about how we use it. And we've kind of alluded to a lot of this, but, namesake, I mean, like for real, for us, we're very into fitness. And if you listen to our first YouTube episode, you'll know that fitness is a major piece of our life. And what that includes is a lifestyle around it. So that includes the diet, the sleep, the training, all that kind of stuff.
The hydration. Must stay hydrated.
Everything. And Kava does not interfere with that. And for us, that was on our journey of finding something that was not alcohol, that would make us feel good, and that wasn't, cannabis. That we could use legally no matter where we went in the States. That was one of the biggest draws to me at first. Is like, all right, here's a substance that I can drink. It has 0 calories, right? So those of you listening, when you just have Kava in its natural form, there's 0 calories.
Woo!
I mean, there's no sugar. There's nothing. If you eat the Kava root itself, it's got a little bit of fiber in it, but you're not eating the root. You're drinking the Kava lactones that are extracted from it. It doesn't affect your metabolism. It doesn't affect your sleep. If anything, what it does is, it dehydrates you maybe a little bit because it is a diuretic. So you do need to hydrate with it. But, for someone out there who's on the fitness journey and really wants something that they can feel good on, is not going to mess with anything, because I want to talk about the two biggest things, alcohol and marijuana, right? When you smoke cannabis, more likely you're probably going to go eat a bunch of food. You're done.
Probably not the best food.
Probably not the best.
If you got some intense munchies, then I don't know about anyone else, but when I get a little cannabis, like I become a 5-star chef and I just make like all the things.
Legit, she went like, okay. Heidi has the record for making like the best eggs.
The perfect fried egg.
Yeah,
like,
when she's
perfect. One time. We try and replicate it all the time and we can't. That being said, everything goes out the window when you're in the headspace of being high, and you're not always going to be, on point with like what you're eating. Like it's just a fact,
So it's tough. So if you're on a fitness journey, or especially you're trying to, maybe lose body fat or be more mindful with your nutrition, sometimes things like cannabis can derail that.
It's great if you're trying to bulk, but
if you're trying to bulk, yes, for sure. Same with alcohol, right? So alcohol is going to mess up your metabolism. It's going to shut your metabolism down for when you're drinking, and a day or two afterwards. It's going to mess with your hormone levels, all that kind of stuff. It's going to mess up your sleep. We can go down the massive rabbit hole of how
we'll do an episode on alcohol, but just for those who don't know, when people think about alcohol and its detriments, they think about the calories, and they're like, well, I'm doing vodka, lemons, like no calories, and it's like that's not how it works. Well, how it works is it just stops your metabolism, essentially. Alcohol is a poison. When it enters your body sees it as a poison and it stops metabolizing everything else. This is generally speaking. I'm sure people will be like, that's not the scientific truth. But generally speaking, it shuts down your metabolism until it gets that poison out of your body. So for people who are drinking every single day, even if it's just one drink, you're fucking your metabolism. And that's what people don't realize alcohol does. And Cava does not have those side effects.
Yes. And, for us, that was a massive, I guess you could say, selling point for
this plan. That's huge. Like that should be huge for everyone.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I understand that not everyone might not be, as fitness fanatics as us and are okay with extra calories here and there or whatever. Like, I got it. But, just in general, for longevity and for your health, alcohol, is probably not the best thing. And so that's why, we say Cava is a great alternative. It's not going to give you, again, you're not going to go out to a Cava bar and black out.
It's not going to get you lit, as they say, but
I don't know. Hey, we're 35 years old, so like we don't know what the kids are out there saying.
We're not as hip anymore, but
but it's not going to get you drunk. It's going to make you feel really good if you drink a lot of Cava. Yes, it'll get you kind of like, I don't know, what's the word to describe it?
It's just the word muddy is like a great way to describe it. Like it'll get you a little like goofy.
It'll hit you hard. Sometimes.
Yeah, and you can be super couch locked. Like if you have a really heavy, cultivar, like you will be super like just want to go to bed. But generally speaking, if you just have a little bit, you're safe to drive. It's not like alcohol where it impairs you to the point that you can't drive. Of course, if you have too much, you shouldn't get behind the wheel, just like anything. But it's not like I am a huge proponent. If you've had one drink, you should not get behind the wheel. And Cava's not like that. It doesn't impair you in that way. And it can, if you drink too much, it can.
Regardless of any substance that you're using, if it does get you to a certain spot, then yes, don't operate heavy machinery.
Of course.
Don't go driving. Don't go, to your, massive, first interview at your dream job under the influence of a bunch of Cava. Right. So use it in moderation and with tact. And one thing too, a couple more things I want to hit on, right? So we talk about drinking Cava, and you'll hear us start, talking about this more, the more you follow us and the more you listen to us, is the reverse tolerance.
Yes, this is huge.
Another really substance I can think of has this. So reverse tolerance. First, let's talk about normal tolerance. Any other substance, think about like, cannabis, alcohol.
You hear the term like a lightweight. So if you haven't drank alcohol in a while and you have like one beer and you're already feeling, drunk, that you have a low tolerance, right?
Yeah. And I would even say something that we pretty much all of us consume caffeine, right? The more caffeine you consume, the more caffeine you're going to need to get that effect. So say if you start out with a cup of coffee a day, after a couple months, even maybe in a couple weeks, you might be at 2, 3 cups of coffee.
No.
Yeah, and a whole pot of coffee, right?
Yeah.
So your tolerance is building. Now with Cava, it's the opposite. So the more Cava that you drink and the more consistently that you drink it, the more you're going to feel the effects off of less.
So the less you will need to feel those desired effects. And in the going along with that, the first few times you try Cava, you may not feel it.
Yep.
Or you may need a lot before you feel it. And everyone is different. So some people might feel it sooner than others, but that's a huge barrier to Cava. Is obviously it doesn't taste good for everyone. It's not, you don't drink it for the taste, but a lot of people, it doesn't taste good and they don't feel it right away. So they're like, why am I doing this? I'm not going to drink it again.
Yeah. And that's key what Heidi just said, because if you do, listen to this episode and you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to go try Cava, and you go to your local Cava bar or you purchase Cava at home and you make it at home and drink it, just be aware that the first couple times you might not feel it, and you might feel something, but you might not feel it to the extent of what you will after consistent usage of this.
Which is cool though, because once you are consistent with it, if you drink alcohol and you build that tolerance, you got to drink more and more and more, and it's expensive, right? And so Cava, the more you drink it, the less you need. And so you can have just one shell. That's what it's called in Cava. It's called a shell. It's often served in a shell, just like these, a little coconut shell. And you get to the point where you can drink one shell and you feel it and you feel good, and two shells and you're like, that's my max. Like I don't need anymore. And that's awesome.
and it's crazy too. And I just want to give context. So, someone like, me, I'm roughly about 235 pounds. I can have, because I'll be honest, I drink a lot of Cava. Okay?
He drinks it daily.
So I drink it daily, but I'm at the point now where, I can have a shell of strong Cava and I'll feel it.
Yeah.
I make my Cava a certain way. I make it pretty strong. So depending on where you go to different Cava bars, whatnot, the strength of the Cava might be different. So just keep that in mind. You might get watered down Cava if you go somewhere. I make my Cava very strong, but that's how I do it. I like more concentrated Cava. Some people like the experience of drinking Cava more, so they'll actually dilute their Cava a little bit. That way they can, have a longer session, sit more on it too, which is, I understand that piece as well.
And another thing, going off of the dilution, it's not necessarily diluting it, but a lot of times Cava bars will offer coconut milk with your Cava, and that's because the fatty, so even if you're eating fatty foods, it helps makes the lactones more intense, basically.
Yeah, potential. So you don't have, and I want you to stress this too, that you can just make your Cava with water and drink it with water and you're fine. There is some, research and anecdotal evidence that having Cava with a fatty drink like coconut milk, it's probably the I would say the most popular thing.
Yeah, and it helps it taste a little better. It does taste a little better. So if it's hard your first few times, have a little bit of coconut milk with it, and it helps it go down a little bit easier.
And those MCTs, those medium chain triglycerides in coconut milk, those fatty acids actually help potentiate the Cava lactones a little bit more. So keep that in mind too. When you're drinking Cava, yes, I like to do mine with water, but you can mix it with other stuff too if you want. But yeah, the reverse tolerance is awesome. So like I was saying, me right now, I can have a shell or two shells of Cava and I'm in a good spot. Whereas in the beginning, when I was first drinking Cava, I would need, 3, 4, maybe 5 shells of Cava to get me to where I feel now off of 1 or 2 shells.
Yeah. So I think that is a huge plus of Cava, is that reverse tolerance. But again, going into it your first few times, keep that in mind. You might have to try it a few times before you get that full Cava experience. But that also brings up a good point that everyone's body is different. So even though, someone might have felt it way sooner, your body's different. So it might take your body longer. And the effects are going to be different on anyone. So we talked about like the heavy versus heady. Each Cava lactone, each each cultivar has a specific, will help with specific things. Might make you feel a little sleepy, might make you help with anxiety, things like that. But it's going to be different for everyone. So even though that's the general, formula that it should feel like, it might feel totally different for you. And it's just a matter of trying it, figuring it out, and seeing how your body responds to it. So don't be surprised if it feels different for you than, your friend. That's okay. That's normal. That's the beauty of botanicals, really. Any botanical is going to feel different in each different body.
Yeah. And I'll kind of give this anecdotal experience as well. And if you followed us, the past couple of years, listen to our audio, you've probably heard me talk. Like I deal with a lot of like sleep issues. So I have like, insomnia. I go through periods kind of with that. So that's also why I tend to gravitate towards heavy kavas, because I already have issues sleeping. So I don't like anything that's going to potentially keep me up at night. But I've had kavas in the past that were supposed to be very, very heavy. And everyone was like, oh, this is going to be amazing for sleep, right? Even the vendor was saying like, this is one of our best ones for sleep. And that Cava ended up, kept me up like all night.
Yeah. So, and I remember that because he was so excited. He's like, oh, I'm going to get the best sleep ever. I think it always is hard too when someone builds anything up too much. You have that hype. And then if it doesn't hit it exactly, you're like super disappointed. But he ended up, having like a hard time sleeping. And that was a rough night. And again, for most other people, it was super heavy, super sedative. And for him, it just wasn't.
And for us personally too, like we keep, so obviously we do Cava reviews, product reviews. So we have a log all out there on the internet, on our website, and on our Instagram of all of our reviews. But also I keep, notes on all the Cavas that I drink. So the brands, the cultivar, even down to like remembering like how much did I actually drink. So that way, I kind of know, if I want to purchase Cava myself, or if I go to a Cava bar, I have a good idea of like, okay, this is the effect that I want. And I know that most likely it's going to have this effect. Or I bought in this Cava before I bought this cultivar. It's consistent. This is what I get from it. But, we're always trying new stuff, always trying new Cavas, and that's just kind of the name of the game. So
yeah, so that is something that we, strongly encourage you. Just try it for yourself. Figure out how specific, cultivars feel for you, and don't let other people's experiences scare you away. All right, speaking of being scared, Cava is something that, especially Charles being former active duty military, they're drug tested all the time. There's, we won't get into that now, but the DoD has a huge string of things that you are not allowed to drink and eat. And although Cava, they recently added on to that, it is not anything that it's legal everywhere. It's not illegal, and you cannot, you're not going to pop on a drug test for it.
Right. So going off of what Heidi just said, yes, that's one of the biggest reasons I came across Cava was because, I was active duty for just over 11 years. And especially, I was on airplanes. I flew on airplanes, and I had critical roles, right? And, was drug tested quite a bit. And then if there was ever any aircraft mishap, we knew that once we got off the plane, we would get drug tested immediately. So with that being said, had to be very careful of what I was consuming on a daily basis. Now, Cava will not make you pop on a standard drug test. If you take, sometimes there's reports out there, the really, really cheap drug tests that you get at like, Walmart for like $3. There's some reports out there that Cava has given false positives on certain substances before, But if you're in a legitimate, job that's doing legitimate drug testing, mass array drug testing, going through an actual lab, it will not come up on anything. Now, certain places, they can drug test for kava lactones, but that's more for like if you're like in recovery or you're specifically being drug tested for kava.
Yeah, and it has to be a specific drug test for kava. So the average, place of business employer is not going to pay for. I would highly doubt that they would pay for, a kava drug test.
It's such a specific test that is going to be very expensive. So put this out there, right? Like, again, being in the military, I drank kava for a lot of that time. Never had issues with drug tests.
And
Again,
he's been drug tested
a lot,
many times.
But also for everyone out there too who are susceptible to drug tests for their careers, whatever your case is, right? And you're looking for something. You're looking for a substance that you can drink and relax. Cannabis is probably not an option for you. Alcohol might not be an option for you. Kava is something to look at. Again, it is sold as a dietary supplement in the United States. It is sold essentially as a supplement, same as like a protein powder or a vitamin C or a B12 vitamin that you would go get at the vitamin shop. So the legalities of it, you're good, right? Doesn't matter what state you're in. If you're in Texas, New York, Florida, California, Cava is legal everywhere. There's no current bans on it. And, it's something that I really like about that piece because it's a safe option. It's a good option if you are in a career or a job where you can't take any risk with, substances that could potentially pop you for a drug test.
Yeah. So we're so thankful that we found Cava, and it's really just been a blessing, to our life, and it's our lifestyle now. It just fits in perfectly with our lifestyle. And we just really encourage you, if you haven't tried it out, find a Cava bar. I think that's a great sort of barrier of entry. And then, know that you can, brew it yourself at home. Follow our Instagram. We have all sorts of reels where we show how to, shake it up, how to brew it, how to make it yourself, and enjoy it.
All right, guys, we hope you appreciate today's episode. Again, we're trying to give you all a top level kind of overview of Cava, but in general, if you're not trying Cava after this episode, you're doing it wrong. Go get yourself some Cava. With that being said, let's do our bula.
All right. Thanks, guys.